Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and very good day. We are from Group 5 and today we would like to present about molecular dynamic simulations. Our group is consist of 7 group members, which is the first one, Muhammad Azizi Chua, A18SC0115, Muhammad Adi bin Ayub, Amirul Akil bin Abdul Aziz, Muhammad Haikal Irwan, Cik Muhammad Farid Sirfki bin Cik Suhaimi, Putra Fahid Kalafin Arifin, and me, Muhammad Yadi Fikri bin Mahathir. Molecular dynamics is a computer simulation method for identifying the atomic and molecular motions. By integrating the equation of motion and applying boundary conditions relevant to the system's geometry of symmetry, we may track the time course of the system's interactions. This method uses Newtonian dynamics to compute the net force and acceleration experienced by each atom in a molecular assembly. Each atom, I at position Ri, is treated as a point with a mass Mi and a fixed charge Qi.
So for the first challenge is the time and spatial gap. The objective is bridging the length and time scale gap CMU. Molecular simulation at either a classical or quantum level are generally required to arch at a time step smaller than the smallest time scales of a system of 10 to 15 seconds. As the system grows larger, the computational time taken in solving the calculation for the simulation can increase also enormously, particularly for quantum mechanical problems. Change in a large system overall morphology, such as the folding of the protein or the length of time necessary to obtain good statistics, can be of the order of milliseconds or even years for very glassy materials. There is a huge spatial and time gap between what can be solved through molecular simulation and the timescales that are often important. Major problem confronting material and biological molecular simulations. No improvement in computer hardware or architecture can even come close to solving. Certain aspects of a system may sometimes be treated completely quantum mechanically. Notion of modeling a system over hierarchy of spatial and time scales, where information from lower level having a relatively fine spatial scales is used to construct a coarser scale model a level above, having fewer variables. The timescales at the coastal level must be slower than that occurring a level below.
Assalamualaikum and a very good day I bid to everyone. My name is Muhammad Azizi Chua and I will be presenting the molecular dynamics simulation challenge in which are cooling rate effect. So to ensure the integration accuracy of the equation of motions, molecular dynamics simulation use time steps in the order of the femtoseconds. This limits the total accessible simulation time in practical simulations ranging from hundreds picoseconds to a few nanoseconds, which leads to cooling rate of KPS level during the simulated cooling process. This cooling rate is still many, in which are a range of 6 to 9 orders of magnitude higher than fastest possible experimental ones. This is also one of the common criticisms of molecular dynamics simulation of glasses from our experimental colleagues on glass structures generated using computer simulations by the melt and quench process. The study of sodium silicate glasses shows that simulated glass structures based on ionizable potential and procedures are not that much different from the experimental structural data, suggesting that direct comparison of cooling rate values from experiment and simulation might be misleading due to two main reasons. In which the first one is the number of atoms used in simulations, although with applied periodic boundaries condition. Secondly, is the number of atoms in glass simulation range from initially a few hundred to now a few tens of thousands, which is many orders of magnitude smaller than the real glass samples. In this situation, the atoms have higher chance to exchange energies with the boundaries so the system can achieve equilibrium faster. As a result, higher cooling rate from simulated process might not lead to drastically different glass structures, which explain the similarities of the simulated as compared to experimentally observed glass structures with increasing computing power. The trend of cooling rate can be systematically studied using relatively large system sizes. That is all from me. Thank you very much and have a nice day.
The third challenge, which is the simulation size and concentration effect. The molecular dynamic simulations have grown in size during the last few decades, and however, there are still certain attributes that are still susceptible to their system size, and this includes the clustering behavior of the minor component, which is the rare earth ions. They are still extremely sensitive to the system size impact, and it's important to supply large simulation cells to get statistically significant findings when examining the clustering behavior of low concentration component. But in this system, the clustering tendency cannot be studied. And according to the Cuckoo and Do, which they have investigated, and as we can see in the graph, it is demonstrated that the clustering behavior for small sizes are inconclusive. And the largest size, however, for the largest system size, they can provide better statistics, and the probability based on the molecular dynamic structure, it is consistently high for the random distribution in silica glass. However, in the sodium silicate glasses, the probability is lower.
This article is about a review on application of molecular dynamic simulation to study food proteins. So the objective of this study is to improve the overall nutritional and organoleptic qualities of processed food products. The second one is to gain insight into product protein dynamics to be able to develop novel or modify existing food processing techniques. So the opportunities that contained in this article is molecular dynamic simulation is used to visualize the result reported in the study in real time and also obtain an insight into dynamic involved. The second one is molecular dynamic simulation will also provide statistical information such as hydration energy, efficiency, and even involve kinetic. The third one is the hydration process of the enzyme in non-aqueous solution can be studied using the molecular dynamic simulation.
So for the second opportunities is about the molecular simulation of ionic liquids, which is the current status and the future opportunities. The objective for this opportunities is to provide summary of some of way in which classical atomistic molecular simulation, such as Monte Carlo MC and molecular dynamic MD, that has been used to understand the behavior and properties of ionic liquid. And the second objective is to suggest possible new areas of inquiry for those in the condensed phase modeling community who are not yet familiar with the ionic liquid. The opportunities is firstly to enable them to stimulate very large system efficiently while retaining the use of standard MD simulation method. And then some of the limitation of the standard MD can also be overcome through the use of accelerated dynamic method. And lastly, MD can be used so widely because there are several powerful and general open source code on hand that can be used immediately to study the ionic liquid.
Opportunities 3. Application of molecular dynamic simulation in geological high-level radioactive waste disposal. The objective. Firstly, molecular dynamic simulation has been adopted as an alternative method to address geological high-level radioactive waste disposal issues. Secondly, molecular dynamic simulation in the study of swelling of clay minerals and the transport and absorption properties of ions. For the opportunities, molecular dynamics can be performed to study the extreme conditions of high-level radioactive waste disposal, such as high pressure, high temperature, and low permeability. Molecular dynamics can be conducted to compute the dynamic properties of the confined fluid, the scale of which is not always accessible to experimental probing instruments. Lastly, molecular dynamics can be utilized as an alternative method to replace, predict, and explain experiments by analyzing the trajectories of atoms when laboratory or field experiments are impossible, risky, expensive, and blind.